2021 was undoubtedly an incredible year for the world in general, but more specifically professional wrestling. From the return of fans to the growth of America's #2 wrestling promotion, the busting down of the Forbidden Door, and the resurrection of professional wrestling's indie circuit, it's hard to deny the fact that right now is the best time in a long time to be a professional wrestler or wrestling fan. Now going into a new year and having a couple of massive shows at the start of this year, I had myself asking the question, who starts 2022 as the best wrestler in the world right now? Now, this question could be taken many ways, and this list couldn't be more subjective if I tried to make it so. But today, I'll be giving my top 10 professional wrestlers today based on a certain set of criteria. Please keep in mind that my list will obviously differ from yours, and I encourage healthy debate in the comments section. I specifically waited for WWE's Day 1, AEW's move to TBS, and New Japan Pro Wrestling's biggest show, Wrestle Kingdom, because I knew that would change this list quite a bit. Before you jump at my list, please listen carefully to my reasoning and criteria. One thing I need to make absolutely clear is that when I say best wrestler, I mean in the kayfabe sense. I've said it a couple of times, I try to view and judge wrestling as a work and as a sport. I am not discussing the best in-ring wrestler or the most technical wrestler. Honestly, that conversation somewhat bores me, especially when you compare it to the world of kayfabe. So what does that mean? A lot of this will be based on who the current world champions or top guys are across the major league wrestling promotions, and no, I don't mean MLW. The way wrestlers are booked in these promotions is pivotal to their rankings. In my estimation, there are only a few major league wrestling promotions in the world right now, that being WWE, AEW, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, you may think this is biased to what I watch, but I assure you, I do not watch all these products religiously. I think the North American promotions speak for themselves. Anything outside the big two should be considered respectfully as the minor leagues. You could almost think of it as the next division down. That would include things like Impact, NWA, ROH, if you still count that, GCW, MLW. Again, that's not to say that these promotions can't put on incredible shows, but they're not even on television, and fitting in with the kayfabe look at things, they can't be put on the same level. They are the second division. You may decide to even discredit the work that wrestlers do in Japan, but I promise you, if you asked most of your favorite wrestlers, they would love the opportunity to work in Japan or have done so in the past and hold nothing but respect for the country's wrestling history and the prestige that the titles hold. New Japan Pro Wrestling being the country's biggest wrestling promotion makes it a major league wrestling promotion. You may make the same claim with a CMLL or AAA, deserving to be considered too. I don't think Mexico is at the same level as Japan, to be honest with you. And while we're there, neither is England, so count out their promotions. That narrows it down to what I think are the big three. All very different promotions, and love them or hate them, you have to respect their force as wrestling companies. My last point would be that this is not a list of my best wrestlers over the calendar year or the end of 2021, or this is not a PWI list for the best wrestler of the year. These are my top 10 wrestlers in the first couple of weeks of 2022. Yes, a lot of what they did in the last calendar year will play a factor, but where they are right now is how I'll be ranking them. So it goes without saying that any inactive wrestlers, whether they're injured, free agents, or otherwise, are obviously not on this list. I think that clears up my thought process going into making this list. So without further ado, the top 10 wrestlers in the world right now. I do have to give some honorable mentions so you guys know who was in and around this area. So I'll quickly list them off. Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, Nick Aldis, Edge, Jay White, Randy Orton, and of course Big E, who were at some stage in my top 10. And also Cody Rhodes, Kenta, and Jeff Cobb, who just barely miss out on my current top 10. Number 10, CM Punk. This may seem like a fanfare pick, one made based on name value alone more than anything. Simply a way to celebrate his return to professional wrestling after 7 years, but I assure you, when you look at the way CM Punk has been booked in his return, as slow of a start as it was, his momentum and wins currently put him right at the bottom of the top 10 in the world. At the time of recording, he's 8 wins, 0 losses, with wins over Eddie Kingston and a top 20 guy, Darby Allin. He's currently in a feud with MJF that I think he should and will lose, and that will knock him out of the top 10, but not by much. Spoiler alert, but he would be losing to another top 10 guy right now, but imagine he wins. It's not impossible that he could do it and move to 9-0, and if he did, there would be calls of a title shot cementing himself as a top 10 guy. Number 9, Hiroshi Tanahashi, the ace of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Tanahashi held the Never Openweight Championship for 93 days, defeating Shingo Takagi, who would go on to become the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, and also held the IWGP United States Championship for 84 days, defeating Lance Archer for the belt, making him a combined 177 days as a champion last year, and he also reclaimed the IWGP United States Championship at New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom show, so he's added a belt around his waist once again. He only went 4 wins and 5 losses in the G1 Climax, which is a very important tournament in the world of professional wrestling, but specifically Japan. And overall, the 45-year-old probably doesn't have many more years in the top 10, but I think at the start of 2022, he absolutely deserves this spot. Number 8, Miro. If you've watched this channel so far, you may have caught on that I have a bit of a man crush on Miro. I can't put it any simpler than this. Miro was by far the most improved wrestler of 2021. He also has an argument as having the best presence of any wrestler in the world right now. I give him a fair chance at defeating any wrestler in the world on his day. The Redeemer is absolutely in his element going into 2022, and apart from a few blemishes, has been very dominant. He had a record of 17 wins and 3 losses last year, but only 2 of those were actually singles losses, and those were against Sammy Guevara, who he lost the TNT title to after a 141-day reign, and the other one was against Bryan Danielson, who became #1 contender for the AEW World Championship. And technically, he was nursing a leg injury during that match as well. I can't say this enough about Miro. I think this guy will hold the AEW World title one day. Number 7, MJF. AEW mark comments are incoming, but MJF is easily a top 10 guy. You may debate where exactly he is in your top 10 right now, and admittedly, maybe he is a touch too high here, but if you told me right now who I think, based on the way they're booked, is more likely to win a match between MJF and anybody else on this list without a belt, I would say it's at a minimum a coin toss. MJF has been booked as the ultimate heel. He holds wins over Sammy Guevara, Chris Jericho, and Darby Allin, and his only loss came in a very questionable loss against Chris Jericho in their rematch. He's never been cleanly pinned in an AEW ring. Ever. Number 6, Bryan Danielson. His loss to Hangman Adam Page on the debut episode of Dynamite on TBS has done nothing to his ranking. He only has 1 singles loss in his AEW career, which, as previously mentioned, came against the world champion, and he also main evented WrestleMania in a losing effort to another world champion. So he's really only getting defeated by the creme de la creme. He's been an absolute force over the last calendar year, and as crazy it is to say, he's in some of his best form. I'm sure the loss to Hangman is only a minor setback. Bryan Danielson is world champion material in any promotion. All he's missing is the belt to prove it right now. Number 5, Shingo Takagi. The former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion had a truly remarkable breakout year last year, claiming his first World Championship for New Japan Pro Wrestling that he held for 211 days. This couples his 93-day reign as Never Openweight Champion, which he also had last year. He had a 6-win, 2-loss, and 1 draw record in the G1 Climax, placing him 2nd in his block. He was effectively the head of the LIJ stable in Tetsuya Naito's absence. His speed and power are a true weapon that would be a match for any competitor in the world, and this guy doesn't have bad matches. No bad performances. To say that Shingo Takagi has grown into the role of a top guy in the last year is an absolute understatement. And to put it officially, he is currently the #1 wrestler without a title. Number 4, Brock Lesnar. Brock wasn't even on my list before day 1 because I didn't consider him full-time enough to be rated, but with his capturing of the WWE Championship, it instantly elevated one of the greatest of all time into the number 4 spot. With a couple of more defenses of the title, he will easily be climbing even further up this list, but being on a contract that limits his appearance makes me feel that he won't be defending this title too many times, and I still think that his final destination of this run is back with a match against Roman Reigns, which I inevitably see him losing. There isn't much I need to explain when it comes to Brock. The guy is a monster and we all know it. Number 3, Hangman Adam Page. Honestly, putting Hangman at number 3 just feels wrong, especially when you look at the fact that he defeated Kenny Omega, who was a top 2 guy at the time, for the AEW World Championship, and then defeated Bryan Danielson, who is just outside the top 5 right now, to defend that title for the first time. It's fair to say that spots 2 to 4 are incredibly interchangeable in my mind. Hangman is definitely more than capable of defeating anyone in the world right now. He had a minor setback last year with a loss against Brian Cage, but after taking time to clear his head and welcome his son into the world, Hangman may be the most in-form wrestler on the planet right now. Number 2, Kazuchika Okada. It may seem incredibly strange, but even before capturing the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, I had Kazuchika Okada as number 2 on this list. What may be more crazy is that he hadn't even held the title since 2019. The 5-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion definitely had a cold 2020, but he really ramped it up last year and he's only gotten better and better, and has finally risen back to the pinnacle and has become IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Last year, he lost to Shingo Takagi for the vacant world title in June, but since then, he was almost unbeatable. He had a minor hiccup of a loss against Tama Tonga in the last match of his G1 Climax, but that was his blemish the whole tournament as he went on to win the whole thing, a tournament that we've discussed on this channel as the most prestigious in the world. He's publicly said he believes his G1 win is more important and more impressive than being the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, and while I wasn't sure at the time if I completely agreed with that statement, it's hard to sit here and say that the G1 is easier to win than the world title, because I don't think it is. It has become, in my opinion, the absolute pinnacle of professional wrestling. It may transcend world titles at this stage, but even if it doesn't, Okada went into Wrestle Kingdom and won the IWGP Heavyweight title against Shingo Takagi and followed it up with a successful defense the night after against Will Ospreay. Either way you look at it, Kazuchika Okada is almost untouchable right now. Number 1, Roman Reigns. Acknowledge him. Whatever you may think of the product or the company that Roman Reigns wrestles for, it is undeniable that he is currently sitting on the peak of the professional wrestling mountain. Roman is currently doing his best work, and he only keeps improving week on week. He boasts wins against Kevin Owens, Finn Balor, John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Edge in a singles match, Bryan Danielson in a singles match, Edge and Bryan Danielson in a triple threat match where he pinned both of them at the same time in the main event of WrestleMania. It's not even close. I don't watch WWE. That's the truth. I keep up with it as much as possible, but I do not watch it at all. But what I can say is that right now, Roman Reigns is on his game. The way he carries himself, the swagger, the tribal chief and his stable, Paul Heyman, who was by his side, the dominance that he's shown. Not to mention that at the time of recording, he's just under 500 days as WWE Universal Champion and counting. The man is clearly number 1 in the world right now. And let's be completely honest, he could be nowhere near done yet. Who knows what will happen with him, and he may drop this title very soon, and it'll be hard to keep him at number 1 after that. But he could easily go through this WrestleMania season, still champion, go to SummerSlam, still champion. He might unify the titles. This run is unbelievable, and regardless of what happens, it's one for the history books. And starting 2022, Roman Reigns is the number 1 professional wrestler in the world. That's my list. I can feel the discussion already in the comment section, so I guess I'll see you guys down there. You know how active I can be down there as well. Please bear in mind, so much of this list is subjective, even down to the criteria that I rate these wrestlers. You guys don't have to agree with how I judge it, but I really wanted to make this video, so maybe some of you guys that don't watch a New Japan Pro Wrestling or WWE can see how AEW falls in line with the rest of the world right now. This video and the last video with the breakouts were kind of little fun videos for me to make during the holiday break, where I could just do like a top 5 or a top 10 list. I think the next video will be going back into more traditional content. I mean, I say traditional like I've uploaded a bunch of videos. It's been like 6 videos. But I will slowly be going back into more AEW focused videos. So if you guys weren't too big of fans of these list videos or these top 5, top 10s and hearing my opinions on wrestlers, there will be more sort of narrative videos on AEW coming in the future. However, if you did enjoy today's video, give it a like because it helps it out in the algorithm, and I'll see you guys in a new video real soon.